Okay, as we said in the beginning, a few words about the economic and political dynamics in Latin America. We did quite some reading about that, but it was actually hard to come here and tell you, to talk about all the 8 or even more Latin American countries. So what we try to do is to give you some, highlights or, let's say, information that might be relevant. And if you would like to ask us more about the type of information that we found on the other Latin American countries, just please feel free to come to either one of us after the session or tonight, or not tonight, tomorrow. So, yes, just to go over this a little bit quickly. You have hybrid markets in Latin America. That basically means that these are countries or markets that manufacture products that they both export or consume locally. That's one. Biggest consumer markets are definitely Brazil and Mexico in Latin America from that perspective. Brazil also has a very strong, let's say, local domestic policy. Sorry, it must be industry. That's a typo. I apologize. Industry. And we represent Latin America here, but I know there's a very strong delegation from Brazil here. So, Brazil is expecting a 5% growth in GDP for 2010. It's definitely a very large country with tremendous trade opportunities, also, in the medical device arena. And I think yesterday, it was either Alexandra was actually mentioning at some point that 62% of the Brazilians are from the middle or upper class. And that's exactly something that I found in one of the studies that I read, is that since people are, earning more money, they're also seeking better health care, so they want to pay more for their insurance, so they want to go to better doctors, better clinics, better hospitals, which actually increases the demands for medical equipment in those hospitals. So it's kind of a snowball effect, and there's a growing need for, medical equipment as well. And let's not underestimate the upcoming World Cup and the Olympics in the next, 4 to 6 years. Okay, then you have imports, you have exports. Just a few keynotes is that Brazil, Argentina, and Chile are countries, that import primarily high specification medical technology, and that we need pacemakers, defibrillators, digital imaging, medical products, etc. And one word about Chile, which is really interesting, is that it's also like an underestimated country in Latin America, but it's one that is really growing. One of the fastest growing companies in Latin America. The medical equipment and supply market of Chile reached $334 million US in 2009. And it might be small, for international standards, but it's actually the second largest market after Brazil. And if you would look at the GDP per capita in Chile, then it would come actually second after another country in South America. Do you know which country? Because of the oil production? Venezuela. Yes. Okay, and then other countries like Peru, Mexico, and Venezuela are import more consumables. And consumables are basically products that have to be replaced every once in a while because they wear out. Can be supplies in hospitals, can be stethoscope, can be anything that wears out and needs to be renewed after X number of years. Exports is less developed than imports, but except for Mexico. Have you got any idea why? 90% of the export capabilities lie in Mexico.
Right along the border with the U.S.
Yeah. Yes. They create all these companies around across the Mexican border for, let's say, cheap manufacturing, and then they export it back to the U.S. But this has been growing for a while, and this is not actually the trend is declining because these U.S. companies are now building less in Mexico and moving to countries like China because the production cost is even cheaper there. I mean, it's definitely a growing thing. And the one thing is that the implantable exports of dental devices and implantable is quite big in Brazil. But again, we have much more information on this, but we thought it might be a little bit too much for you to handle.
Through our research, one thing that did come up, as much as we see trends increasing, steady growth in Latin America, the one factor that came up in multiple surveys is that productivity it is not increasing as much as in other regions. And it is increasing, but relative to other regions, it's not. So this is just a factor that you can attribute it to many different reasons. But one of the trends in GDP that came out from the IMF, was the last survey, did show that. So as much as we want to be cheerleaders for Latin America and explain, that there is growth, there are a lot of challenges as well.
So, as Richard was mentioning the regulatory environment earlier, that it's not fully developed in many markets. They have regulations, but this is still the process of being harmonized. But it seems that in many cases, countries like Brazil and Mexico are many steps ahead of the other countries in that harmonization. Well, we are also, I think most of you are familiar with Mercosur, and I think that the customer you mentioned yesterday also in the context of those security bonds that you have to, and I mean, the same basically applies for the medical device industry. That the countries that we mentioned here come together and close a regional trade agreement to promote actually the free trade, or let's say trade under more favorable circumstances across borders, which is actually also very, which you also can see for the medical device industry. And one nice thing to say about Mercosur is actually it was created in 1991 between Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. And they actually wanted to have 6 countries in there, with Mexico and South Korea. But then in the end, when they started researching those countries, it seemed that Mexico and South Korea were even better, quite better developed than these 4 countries, so they were not admitted. So it started with those 4 countries. I thought it was a nice detail, actually. South Korea, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, some of these alliances don't necessarily make sense as far as the title. Right. Right, exactly. South Korea.
And then, so steady growth, other markets are stagnant, and we're not claiming here that the US and the European market is not growing, but definitely not growing with the same speed as the Latin American market. I mean, since you were also telling it yesterday in the beginning, that Latin American market has been underestimated for a very long time. It's really growing, and it's coming more in the limelight now, but not only Latin America, also India and China. Talented and well-educated teams that work at competitive rates. And, a nice thing to mention here is that, if you go, for example, this is not Latin America, but it's part of it. Like, if you look at the BRIC countries, we have on side our BRIC, it's Brazil, Russia, India, and China. I mean, this is really a growing entity. And if, for example, take India, there are very renowned French MBA organizations who are opening offices in India, so that people can get their MBAs in internationally recognized MBA in India. And so it's definitely also from a skill perspective a very interesting market.
But I think also what's notable is that if you look at Latin America, say you're a company in Europe or North America, and you want to outsource your translations or whatever product it is. Looking at Latin America, it's the talent and the educational background and just the ability to communicate on the same terms. There's a lot more community, and I think that's promoting outsourcing more in Latin America than say maybe in Asia or even India. Yeah, it's a culture. It is, because in India you could argue, well, it's the same language, but it's really not the same culture. So there is something to be said for that cultural component, and there are similarities, great similarities with these 3 big markets. So I think that's actually helping promoting growth.